Hello and welcome back to the Thoughtful Journeys podcast. This is Tyler here. Just letting everyone know the audio is a little rough in this episode. We did it outside again, and there was some wind that came by and kind of caught the mic pretty good, and we tried to do our best editing it out, but we need to do a better job setting up next time. Just wanted to let everyone know that it might be a little rough at some spots, but it was a great conversation, and you can still hear everything we say pretty clearly. If y'all do like the video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and hope y'all enjoy. Welcome back to the Thoughtful Journeys podcast. I'm Tyler, this is Justice right here. Today is episode 7, and we are at Lake Thunderbird in Oklahoma. And today is probably the nicest day of the year, I would say.
Oh yeah, by far.
Beautiful out here today. But today we came to talk about family, traditional values, and fatherhood. And I really wanted to start out with some stats I found when I was researching this episode. And I knew that fatherlessness would have an effect, not having a father figure, obviously.
Yeah.
But some of these stats are pretty shocking. And we will link all of these in the description if you want to go check them out yourselves, but they're all from credible sources. So, 23% of American children live with one parent and no other adults. The world average is 7%. In America, it's 23%.
Oh my God.
Specifically in China, it's 3%. The reason I mentioned China is because we are competing with China in a lot of things, like economically and stuff like that. This is something that we are losing to China in. This is not something we want to be a higher percentage than China.
Yeah.
And 23% compared to 7% of the world average, it's sad to see. It's just sad to see. 80% of single-parent households are single mothers. That's insane
80%.
as well. Yeah. 85% of youths in prison come from fatherless homes. 71% of high school dropouts come from fatherless homes. 90% of all homeless and runaway children are from fatherless homes.
90%?
90%. And 60% of youth suicides are from fatherless homes.
60%.
60%.
So over half.
85% in prison. Dude, that's insane.
Yeah, that's horrible.
Girls from fatherless homes are 7 to 8 times more likely to have a teen pregnancy.
That's crazy, dude.
Fatherless kids are 20 times more likely to be incarcerated and 11 times more likely to exhibit violent behavior than children from a 2-parent household.
Wow.
So those are just some of the stats that I found. We're not just going to have an episode just listing all the stats of fatherlessness, but those are just some of the ones that stood out to me that I wanted to make people aware of, because that's a very concerning thing to know about. Every single one of those people in prison, homeless children, suicides, you are more likely to do all of those things if you don't have a father figure in your household. And I think that a big part of why that's happening is the loss of traditional values and straying away from the nuclear family.
For sure.
What are some things that jump out to you when you heard those stats?
Well, specifically how high the percentages were, just because that shows like a correlation of, there's not a father in the household. Obviously that causes in so many different aspects, that causes a massive difference. And because announcing to everyone that I'm going to be a father in November, that was the kind of idea for doing this episode. I figured out my wife is pregnant about a week ago, and we had our first ultrasound, and it's beautiful, and I'm super excited. And
it's amazing, man.
Thinking about these stats and kind of just thinking about society too is like, what part does media have to do with that as well? And I don't think it's fully to blame, but the idea of baby mama in hookup culture and stuff like that, I feel like plays a part in the modern version of that, because like you said, the traditional family, how it has been for the majority of time, is stable nuclear family, mother, father in the household.
Right.
Dad might work more, not be there as much, but it's not like he's never there. But these situations are the father is just like absent from the child's lives, and that being on such a large scale just really it makes me think just like what brought that about, and what would cause that. And the first things that come to my mind are just, of course, the glorification of sleeping around, baby mama type scenarios and things like that. And it's just, and a lot of, I feel like, impoverished children that live in poverty are affected by this more than most too, because
Right.
that's where a lot of this happens. And I feel like taking accountability and being a father and owning up and being proud of being a father and doing your best. And I think a big thing, because I've been thinking a lot about fatherhood recently and the approach I want to take, and the main thing that me and Marissa have kind of come to is you have to lead by example. You can't be a hypocrite. That's one of the main things about, like, if you're going to discipline your kid and be like, we need to do this, we need to do this, they aren't going to listen if they don't see you living that way. If they see you being a hypocrite, they're not going to listen. And I feel like maybe, this is just speculating, but a lot of people in these situations have kids too early, don't have an established foundation, a home, a job, or anything like that to sustain it. And then instead of uniting the family, it separates the two people and they start arguing. And then you have a father who just gives up and says, okay, well, I'm just not going to be around. As a man, you can't do that. You have to be there. You have to, like, if you're going to have sex and take the risk of having sex without protection or doing any of that, you need to be willing to be there for, that kid. And you better be willing to live with that person that you're trying to.
And not just financially, because I think a lot of people could say child support, but no amount of child support is going to make up for the father not being there in the household as a father figure. Because I think, like, for example, me, although my parents got divorced when I was around 14 or 15, I still had a good relationship with both parents.
Right.
Like, yeah, of course, when it first happened, things were rocky with me and my father, but my dad was still always there. He made effort to spend time with me,
right,
and still do things with me and be proud of me and teach me things.
Didn't give up on me.
Yeah, he was still there through all of it, even though my parents got divorced. So, because I understand, I'm not, like, I think when you get married to someone, that's a commitment you're making that till death do its part, but I get it, sometimes people change, maybe you're not right for each other. Not everyone should be together forever. I get that to a point. So, but just because you get divorced too, I think doesn't mean that you should let that run your child's life.
Great point. Yeah. That has nothing to do with the kid. The kid shouldn't feel like they're somehow responsible for the divorce or the lack of seeing you. And, my parents got divorced a similar time period. I think I was closer to 11 or 12 when they got divorced. And the situation with my mom and my dad was, I was still able to see my dad. He got depressed and I didn't see him as much. And then there was a stint where, for 8th grade year specifically, I didn't really see him at all. And I can definitely say that time period I was the most, like, rambunctious and crazy that I've ever been in my life. I can't correlate that to him just not being there. That was also my own decisions. But thinking about that and thinking about being in that position, it's just not having someone to discipline and check you. Because, most women, not all women, but they're more maternal. They're more caring, loving, supporting, nurturing. Yeah, not disciplining. And there are moms. There's great women out there that do this, that are both sides, and that takes an incredibly strong woman. That's super respectable. But just I can understand why so many kids that come from just mom in the house don't have an idea of, like, oh, this is what I should do, or this is why I should do this, because they're more so just doing things and not really facing repercussions or facing someone being like, hey, this is why we do good and this is why we do bad.
Well, it's clearly an anomaly, people that can do both like that.
Right.
Like, I'm not saying it can't happen, but you just look at you can argue morals, and because I think a lot of times with the nuclear family or abortion or whatever kind of, like, family debate it is, it always comes to this moral stance, like, where do you stand morally?
Right.
But you can't argue with facts.
No. Yeah.
That's not, you can't argue data that shows that if your father's not around, you're 85% more likely to go to prison in your youth, that you're 90% of all homeless children, dude, or runaway people that run away from their house come from fatherless houses.
Crazy.
Like, you can't argue with stats like that. And when they're so high, like you were saying, like, it's extremely concerning.
Yeah.
And something that's really concerning to me about me having children in the future is how much worse it is in America than everywhere else. That's really concerning.
Right.
Which I can kind of see why, because I think when it comes to media, when it comes to PC and progressiveness, I think the forefront of that really is in America. Specifically when it comes to spreading the information, because of U.S. owns the media that goes all over the world.
Right.
So obviously and we are the most free country, so like, you know, people can do whatever the hell they want.
Unless you're impoverished. And that's my, like, because I feel like, I don't know what the statistic would be, but I feel like a huge number of these kids would be coming from a poverty-stricken household, because how can, especially nowadays with the economy, how can mom support every, you know, thing you need with child support? I mean, child support's its own thing, but how can, and sad thing is, side note, a lot of moms...
you get paid for being a single mother from the government.
Really? Not even just child support, but actual, like,
I'm not sure the exact name for it, like alimony or child support, but there is just for being based on your income. If it's below a certain amount and you're a single parent, you get paid just from the government as well.
Interesting.
It might be in the cases where you don't get child support, but I have heard that that's a thing. I'll have to do more looking into that, but I don't think it's incentivized necessarily. Like, I don't think there's a whole lot of people. I don't think there's people out there being like, you should have a kid and then run away from the dad. Like, I don't think that's going on, but I do think that, like you were saying with the baby mama, like the dating culture, all that.
Yeah.
And this is where I stand on the abortion debate as well, because I think the option for when you are pregnant, when you are at that point, I have no clue. I'm not going to say whether you should, whatever, get an abortion. I think where the problem lies is before it gets to that point. Whereas how valuable sex is to you and who you're sleeping with. Like, if we can fix that, then we won't even have to question, like, oh, is abortion morally wrong or right?
Right.
Because if you're having sex with people that you actually love or that you could see, because at the end of the day, that's what sex is. It's to reproduce.
Right.
So you should only be having sex with people that you potentially could see having children with one day, or you can see yourself marrying one day. Not even from a religious perspective. That's just biology. That's what reproducing. That's what sex is.
Logic. Yeah. Just logic.
So I think if we just kind of change the narrative around sex, that could help with the abortion debate, and as well as the single parenthood as well.
I think anybody should be able to make their own choices, but there are situations where you are in a position of, you know, if there was, you know, any kind of sexual misconduct that was a product of that, there's gray areas for all of that stuff where it's justifiable, and then there's areas where it's
like in rape and stuff. Obviously those are extreme scenarios where that's why I'm like, I've never been in part of anything like that. I'm not gonna say like you're wrong for getting an abortion because I don't know your situation. I don't know the context. But I do think that a lot of people just, I've known a lot of people, I've done it myself, just sleeping with random people, unprotected sex. It happens a lot, and that's how a lot of these pregnancies happen at younger ages, like 18 to like 21, let's say, is from, you go to the bar one night and you hook up with this random person, and then 2 weeks later you get a call from the girl and she's saying she's pregnant, and you're like, well, you know, like, I don't even know this person.
I can't imagine being in that position. But talking about being incentivized to have a kid with someone you might not plan on staying with, looking at that from the other perspective, because there's no one like outright advertising, like, go have a kid with somebody and then leave them to whatever. But I've worked closely with child support, and I've had calls myself where I'm talking to a mother and she has 7 kids. She's filling out an application for child support, and then she's going to the oldest kid of her kids to have him tell her about what the names are, birth dates of the other kids, while she's on the phone with me. And that's someone who's incentivizing themselves to have children with other men so they can claim child support. And that's a really sick system. Talking about child support in general, it's something really interesting to me, because
that's evil, bro. Is what that
it is evil. You're creating life to profit off of it for yourself, and just not even caring about their birthday or name.
I can't even imagine what those children's lives must be like.
Exactly. Well, like, and that leads into those statistics you mentioned, because it's like, would you not, like, how could you not be frustrated and pissed off at the world if you grew up with a mother like that and your father's not around, and then you're just like, that's horrible. And that there's definitely, I feel like it could be considered in the future to reconfigure how child support works in different ways, because I feel like there's a lot of children that are stuck in bad positions because there's just money to be made off of them being alive versus supporting them, versus the funds going straight to support them. My brother has to pay child support for his 2 kids, and you wish, that you could make sure that money was going to what the kids needed, not just like alcohol for mom.
But it just goes to the mother.
Yeah.
And she chooses
what to do.
That money's used for. Yeah.
So like I always like a reimbursement thing when you have receipts of this and this and this I bought for the kids, this I paid rent so we could live here, and then you get a reimbursement for those things that you spent. That makes a lot of sense to me. But just saying, okay, this guy makes, $200,000 a year, let's have him pay, $2,500, $3,000 a month for a single child, and give that to the mother, and instead of having guardrails in place to make sure that child's supported with that money, the mom could just treat the child like shit and spend that money on buying like going shopping and stuff.
I actually, a colleague of mine that I used to work with, he was in that situation where he was sending child support to this woman, his ex-wife, and she kicked him out of that situation. He moved out. He ended up moving out because she cheated on him. But she kept the kids on the weekdays and he had them on the weekends. Well, after a few months or whatever, he kind of found out from the kids. They were kind of telling him, not in all the details, but he kind of pieced it together that that money wasn't being used for them.
Yeah.
So he goes over there one day to pick them up for a 4th of July trip. I think it was just something. He was going to pick up the kids to take them somewhere for the weekend. And he gets there and there's no food in the fridge. There's no food in the pantry. There's bills on the table saying their electric's about to get shut off and their rent hasn't been paid. And there's nothing he could fucking do about it.
Right. Yeah. And especially...
And that was the money he was sending her more than enough money to at least pay the rent and provide groceries for her and the children.
Right.
At the very least. And then she had her own income too, so like for anything she wanted she could, but he was sending more than enough to at least put food on the table and keep the fucking lights on, you know? And hearing him talk about that, he got really emotional, and that was the first time in a case like this where I've actually firsthand heard someone talk about it. And dude, I'm sure it gets worse than that, but hearing that and seeing his emotion as he was talking about it was it's sad to see, man.
Oh, it's horrible. Yeah, I mean,
and I'm sure you encounter it daily.
Yeah, I encounter it all the time, and especially like my closest relation is my brother. With his situation and stuck in a loop of working in the oil field to pay bills so he can get out of debt, sending child support to his ex-wife for the kids when he doesn't even know if the money's being used for the kids, and just trying to sustain and hopefully eventually get back home to where he can be with his kids, because he's in a financial cycle of, okay, I pay my debt, I pay child support, I pay, utilities for living and groceries, and then that's all of his money, even though he's making amazing amounts of money. And it's just like seeing that so rough, and like you said, it's emotional and it's hard to see because those people care about those kids. And the court system, in different states it varies, but a lot of times courts don't prefer the father, they prefer the mother, and the mother has maternal instinct and is needed for sure, and that's the foundation of a mother-child relationship. The father needs to be in the picture, but the mom is the nurturing side, so it makes sense. But at the same time, there's a lot of women that aren't doing it. They have all of this authority put on them just naturally, which makes sense, but in reality a lot of them don't deserve that ability to make those decisions because they're using it for their own benefit.
And I think too, something to point out from these stats too is, I'm not gonna sit here and be like, make it a men versus women thing. These stats aren't just for single parent households. These are for fatherless households. Right. So there is a tendency, clearly, for women to not use that money correctly and mistreat the children to force them, not necessarily force them, but put them in situations to where it's a possibility for them to think about suicide, where they don't even feel comfortable talking to their parents or anyone about it.
Right.
Where they get involved with the wrong crowd at school and they end up going to prison for something they did when they were 16, you know? That's obviously you're responsible for your own decisions, especially once you hit around 16, 17 is when if you do something really stupid, you know, I mean, it is on you at the end of the day, but you really got to look at the context of what put you in that situation to make you want to do that,
right?
You know, or what made you feel like you had to do that.
Like your dad's not in the house, like that story I told earlier. Your dad's not in the house. Your mom doesn't know your name or your birthday, and you have 7 brothers and sisters, and probably none of that child support's really going to the shit you really need. Like, imagine growing up like that. Imagine how mad you'd be at the world for, you know, just like. And I feel for any kid that's in that situation because I went through a very small dose of like not having dad around, living with mom, my mom being the way she was, and there being issues, and I can't imagine growing up your whole life like that and having to live through it. And there's needs to be guardrails put into place to make sure these kids are being taken care of, you know. And outside of child support, like just parenting in general, I'm so excited. Like I cannot wait for my kid to be here. I'm so pumped, dude. I'm really so excited. I've been preparing everything around the house. I've been ordering little things and getting stuff ready, and I cannot wait for that. And I can't understand someone being in a position where they are like, okay, I'm bringing life in the world. This is a piece of me coming into the world,
right? And
then being like, I'm just not gonna care about that.
Well, a lot of people aren't like attention like you. Because when you think about it, you see it as this beautiful, awesome, amazing thing, which is what it is, but a lot of people don't expect it, you know. It's not like...
And they're not in a position
they're not planning to have a children, and then one day just find out the woman's pregnant. And that's how you wind up in these really bad situations. Not to say that... I'm sure some of these might have been planned, and then... you know, the father or mother get in a bad situation, something happens, and then they wind up with one parent. I'm sure that happens too, but I'm sure a large amount of this is people just having sex randomly that people are not even with, and then one of them gets pregnant, and then the dad's like, see ya. Right. You know, and that's definitely an issue of like dating culture, I think too. It's not the whole thing, but
selfishness.
That is definitely plays a huge factor in it, I think, is the dating culture nowadays compared to what it used to be.
Yeah, and it's the selfishness of it. Like, you're having sex to please yourself. You're not having sex because you have an intimate relationship with this person or anything like that. You're just having sex to have sex. And then this happens, and instead of owning up to it and doing everything you can, you just say, hands off, I'm going to go to a different state or something. Like, you can't. That's just not a man, in my opinion. You can't, like, if that
it's
happens,
not taking responsibility.
Right. Yeah, you're ignoring it. Yeah, just ignoring the situation. And it's easy to ignore your problems. Like, everything's designed to distract you and keep you from acknowledging them, but...
That's how you really fuck yourself up, though.
Yeah.
Mentally.
Absolutely.
That's because no matter how evil or fucked up, you know, we may think someone is, at the end of the day, once you do enough fucked up shit and you have enough time to sit there and think about it, it's gonna fuck with you bad.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you're gonna look back and be like, fuck, I fucked up. Mm-hmm. Like, there's a lot of situations, like what I think about in my future is I don't want to look back, because clearly we're all gonna make mistakes.
Right.
But I don't want to look back at these like life-altering things and be like, I should have made this decision instead of that. Like, or why did I fuck up so bad? Mm-hmm. I fucked up this great thing going on. Or, you know, this one decision I made shaped the whole rest of my life in a negative way. Yeah. Like, when it comes down to decisions like that, you got to look at the future when you're thinking about stuff like that, because, you know, it's fun, you know, you go to the club, you know, you sleep with some random chick, and you do fucking a drug one night, and it's fun because you're with your friends. You're like, oh, I'm just gonna try it because I want to try it, you know, try it for the first time, and then you end up being a drug addict and not being there for your kids, right. Or you end up having a kid with some random girl who's actually a bitch that is gonna just get all the child support you can out of you and not even support your child. Right. You can try to go to court all you want, but you're not going to get any custody. Yeah. Like that, it comes down to the decisions that you make. You got to really think about them and make smart choices and almost at some point fundamentally change how you see things.
Yeah.
Like dating or your future, like your future in general, whether it comes career, financially, health-wise, all of it. Like a lot of the things we've talked about in previous episodes, I think, could apply to this happening as well, like mistakes. And honestly, dude, just it's really disturbing. This whole seeing all this and
super sad.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's an American problem. And it's so weird because America is at this point of we have more freedoms than like anyone in history.
Right.
We have more technology and tools to do whatever we want to do, create a business idea, pursue art or some kind of creative career, like, you know, just work a 9 to 5 and support your family. All of those options are out there. Anything you can imagine is out there. And it's it's within your grasp. If you go to school or whatever to get it done, it's there. But we are in like this doom and gloom state and having all these issues. And it's like, if there was a real mindset shift, like we talked about in the last episode,
right,
things would get way better and really fast, really, really fast.
So why do you think it's so much worse in America? Like, what's your thought on that?
I think
just if you had to throw something out there.
For the past like 10, 15 years, that there's been an onslaught of negative media glorifying negative things, and of course China trying to overtake the US, you know, economically and as you know, and just world power. And we're, instead of putting up a bunch of fences and guardrails to say, okay, you know, we're not going to let this be a popular topic of conversation in music, or this be a popular thing on media that's constantly upvoted, right? Like it's just all, you know, say la vie, do whatever, who cares? And that people just gravitate to negativity. And last episode I talked negatively about religion, but this is where religion is a good thing, because people need a moral compass. You know, a lot of the time people can't develop their own moral compass and apply that to the world. They need something to say, this is how to be good, this is how you should go about things.
Because
keep going. Can't be littering that.
No. Thought we lost it for good for a second.
Yeah, well, I was about to just commit and just say screw it. It's alright. But I just think generally people having too much freedom leads to them making the wrong choice. Unfortunately, that's just the case. I think people should have as much freedom as they can possibly have, but there should be in the background of all that freedom something kind of steering things towards the better future.
we should. I believe in freedom, but I also believe that there should be laws, you know.
Right.
And even like you said, when it comes to religion, that's one of the good things is the moral laws, you could say, you know, in religion. And because, not to get too much into religion, but one of the issues with it is people just identify with it and it starts conflict with other religions and stuff. But at the end of the day, it does do a lot of good, especially for like a nation that is under religious values compared to just fuck all, do whatever you want, you know. Because it teaches you that to be kind, do good, not to cheat, to provide for your family, to not, you know, obviously the obvious thing is like not to murder and stuff like that, but and just like general guidelines, don't lie, and, you know, try to be honest and be respectable and honorable. But do you think that a loss of religion is potentially like playing a part in this?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Loss of Christianity affecting media and things, because like in the early 2000s, in the 80s, if there was something that was outright against Christian values, there was people protesting that thing and saying, okay, we need to change this, and nowadays you don't see that really. And you know, I don't think that everything like people getting pissed off at Eminem for saying insane shit on his songs back in the day. Okay, that's a gray area because it's like, who is it really hurting? And at the same time, yeah, it's super negative. It's probably affecting somebody with a mental illness taking it the wrong way, right? But like, there has to be religion in the background of the government, not controlling things, not financially in the background, but in the background of how, okay, this is the movie we're going to make. These are the movies we're going to make for this year. Try to make at least the underlying moral of those stories something positive, and you know, not just like.
Well, I mean, there clearly is. I don't think it's just positive because a lot of the movies now, like, they are being controlled and pushing narratives.
Yeah. Oh,
clearly.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's just all the wrong
it's not
ones.
that they're all super negative. It's just that they are. I think a lot of them kind of put people in those two groups. You know, those two sides.
Yeah.
That's what creates more conflict. But
I think something like Euphoria is sick, like that series.
See, I'm not even familiar with that.
I'm familiar with it by just being exposed to it through friends watching and me being in the room. But it's like, you make a show about high school and then you make it all sexual. It's like, what? And there's more to the story for sure, but at the end of the day, like, that was that was in every episode. And it was
like high school.
Yeah. But it's just like, looking at that, if someone was to take that and say, okay, we're going to put a magnifying glass on all the negatives, but at the same time, we're going to show a character that's pushing for the positive and it putting them ahead in some way. Just things like that, little things where people can see good in some way. Even if there's a bunch of negative, there's something good on the other side, or that you can take from it. And if that was just more common, I feel like people would subtly kind of want good. It's just nothing is really promoted that's truly like.
Is it
good.
Partly the consumer's fault though?
Yes, absolutely.
Because they're the only reason it is that, like, we can sit here all day and like talk about how they're pushing out this stuff, but at the end of the day, they're pushing it out because people watch it.
Right.
Because people like it. Like, I was thinking about this the other day when because we've talked a lot about politics and how division and stuff, and how a lot of media is very like controversial and like just loud arguing and bashing heads. It's like, maybe it's that way because more people watch it when it's like that. It brings in more people, more views, more eyes.
That's a great point, because it is incentivized to be that way because that's what people watch, and it's
because it's more of a pop. You know, it's not when if for example a presidential debate, if they're sitting there and being respectful and talking about policies that they disagree on and letting each other finish and then saying their part, and then that's not as entertaining. I think it's probably just like a natural thing where we're more interested in if, you know, it's a huge controversy and they're arguing with each other, and it's more of a pop.
Well, it doesn't give you anything to think about. It doesn't, like, if you're watching, like, let's say Trump and Biden argue, or like X political candidate and X, you know, opposite end political candidate argue about something, and they're being like, how Trump is written, you look like a dog, like things like that. That's you're not having to think about anything after that. But like, you listen to like RFK speak or something like that, you have to like take a step back and really observe like where we're at and how things are, and people just don't want to acknowledge that. And you're right, it's not just like executives are like, okay, let's make this truly just negative thing to affect things negatively. It's because that's what sells. But people have to, and intertwining religion with this again is people killing each other or drawing lines against each other over being one religion or the other. I think that's ridiculous. But the good parts of religion are, and you can see it,
they're great.
There's proof in the pudding. Like when America was truly based around Christian values.
Our country was founded, you know, off of those, and
freedom of religion.
And I would argue the greatest civilization ever is this one right here that we're living in. This country we're living in, this nation, and it's starting to fall apart.
Yeah, it is.
But that is a good point that it was founded off of.
And that's, you could see from the time periods where things were more based around Christian values, how society was.
It flourished.
Like, I mean, being formal, being respectful, that was like a norm. And now we're seeing the opposite of that. And then you hold those two things side by side, you know, that there's more positive when people are generally promoted to do more positive things, but people aren't going to do it unless there's something kind of pushing them in that direction. And that's kind of where I'm at with media in general. Like, the podcast is about positivity and talking about our experiences, sharing them, so maybe somebody can take that and grow from it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like the same thing with music. But the thing I find myself asking at the end of the day is, how do you make people like want to listen to this? How do you make people want to have these thoughts? Because it's hard to make a positive like theme for a song and lyrics and people really like truly accept it and think about it. They don't want to think about it.
I think that goes back to the consumer end of why movies are like that, or music nowadays. So I mean, how I feel is, with us doing this, I don't really care about, like, obviously we want to advertise in some way, get it out there, push to as many people as possible, but I want to do it in our genuine way, how we really feel. I don't want to ever have to say things that I don't truly believe in just to get more people to watch,
For sure. And that's the give and take of it too, because even with somebody like Patrick Bet-David and his show, you see them talk about things sometimes and bring up certain topics just because they know that's what's going to get clicks. And he's a business-minded guy, so of course that's the way things are going to go. But me personally, I don't want it to be based off of like, this is the topic of the day and this is what's popular, so I'm going to go with the popular opinion.
Right.
And, so I can get these views. Like, it's just, that's how things are incentivized right now. It just makes like morally hollow content.
Well, I think the difference too is like just the YouTube videos that people are making are more like that.
Yeah.
And I think what I love about podcasting is that it has a lot more of this, like, genuine conversation where we're just having a conversation and sharing it with people, and that's what a lot of the really, like, dude, how big is Joe Rogan?
Right.
And he brings on people from all different sides of everything. Yeah. Like, he doesn't just bring on one specific type of person, he brings on everyone to give their views, their points, and they have a genuine conversation about things.
Yeah.
And clearly, in a lot of like media, a lot of it's curated, but I think podcast is the most like genuine, authentic form of media.
Absolutely.
Because you can get a lot out of a 2-hour conversation of listening to a really intelligent or wise person.
Mm-hmm.
But what are you really going to get from a 12-minute video where they're just trying to get as many views as possible,
Right. You're going to be entertained, but what are you going to take from it? You're not really going to take anything. And it's really on the consumers, because when we first started talking about it and talking about media, I think of like more of the people creating the media, but really it's because the consumers want that type of thing. It's like reaction channels are like one of the biggest things on YouTube right now, and it's just somebody giving their opinion on something.
Yeah, they're not even creating the content.
Really. Yeah, well, they're just reacting to it, and the content is their reaction. It's like, do people have that little of a like idea of what they believe in, that they need to watch what other people like think and say about things so they can follow that? And it's just, if you feel like you're in that place, delete social media and find yourself, and then come back to it. But,
well, and I think that could also play in part to why parenting is at such a bad place is they don't really think about things.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they have no values. Since they have no values or nothing to think about, they have nothing to pass to these children.
Right.
And so they don't know what boundaries to set with their children. They don't know what values to instill in them. They don't know what to do when your child acts up, or what age should you give your kid a phone?
Right.
Should I give my kid sugar tonight? Because I feel like a lot of it is to avoid any conflict, they'll just give the kid whatever they want.
Right.
And that ends up being the worst thing for the kid.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then obviously there's the extreme case where you can't afford anything. And then, that's usually from the parents are on drugs or just in a really bad situation. And obviously there are people in poverty that aren't doing horrible things like drugs and stuff. They're just in a really bad situation. But I do think that before you do become a parent, being able to have your own values and
absolutely
think about things for yourself, because a lot of the things that I've thought about when my perspective on the world and stuff has been formed over the last few years. My core values about how I view interacting with people and respecting people and just like positivity in general, I got that from my parents.
Right.
You know, that's not something that just happened over a few years. That's something that was built into me from like since I was born, you know? And I got those values from my parents, and I'm super thankful for that. And there's a lot of kids that never form any values at all, so they grow up, and then when they actually see something that could potentially form a value, they just, like you said, they don't even think about it.
Yeah, well, they have to ignore it because if they start having that thought, they have to think about all the other negative things and so on and so forth. But something that really comes to my mind with what we're talking about is like kids that get an iPad put in front of them, and that is their like babysitter, you know, because that's super common nowadays. Like I worked at a restaurant for a little bit and saw that all the time. Like it was insane. Like you see a kid with headphones and an iPad at the dinner table, and you're paying to go out.
What age range?
Like I would say
like, what's like the lowest you saw?
Lowest was like a 2-year-old, like tiny kid, and then most was probably like closer to 10, and you know, just as locked in. And you're going out to pay money so you can eat with your family at a place, and you don't have to cook, so someone cooks for you and your family, and your kid's not even interacting with you the whole time. Like that's insane. But
because you're not just paying for the food.
That feeds into a lot of this that we're talking about, is because if you grow up and instead of your parents being like, oh, this is what you like, you shouldn't do this because this is what's right, this is what's wrong, this is what you should believe in, you're watching like a reaction streamer like Quest Critical or something like that, or even like something that's like politicized reaction content, which is even worse for your brain, and you're watching that, then you're developing your ideas through content that's made to distract you. Like you're not going to develop really anything that.
Well, it's also a lot of it's made to specifically give you one
way of thinking.
Yeah. And it's very easy to. I've experienced this, not even as just a kid, but early adulthood. It's whenever I first started having beliefs and got my own values and stuff, it was hard for me to think that maybe I was wrong. But now I have a mindset of no matter what conversation I go into or what kind of content or book I'm going to read, I'm not going into it thinking that my values are set in stone. Like I'm always willing to change opinions based on new information.
Right, absolutely. And your core, like you said, your core values are going to exist, but you should be able to bend and shape your core values to your life experience.
Right.
It shouldn't just be, well, this is what I was told from day one, so this is what I believe. Because if you go through a situation that puts a new perspective on it, you can't just ignore the new perspective. You can't just like put that to the side, but that's critical thinking. And someone that's raised just looking at tweets and like just BS content all day long is not going to be they're not going to critically think about anything. They're just going to take everything at face value and be like, oh, that's what.
And you don't have to be like some philosopher when you're a child. But I think that if you're learning about human interaction through Twitter or through YouTube, that's not that's not the way to do it. You need to actually get out there in the world and interact with other kids and other people. And that's why another thing with family, that not just when it comes down to parenthood and two-parent households, is having a family like gatherings and being involved with your family and being close to them. That's something that really helped me a lot too growing up. Is my family always had a really good connection with my dad's side of the family specifically. Like I still see my aunts and uncles and cousins somewhat frequently, and growing up I saw them all the time, you know. And we always have a yearly not really a vacation, we just go to the lake for a weekend or go to float the river here in Oklahoma, and spending that valuable time with family that's lost as well. I mean, just because when you think about family, there is more than just your two parents. You know, you do have cousins and aunts and uncles and brothers and sisters and all that. I feel like a lot of times people, they turn 18, they move out, and then they're not a part of that family anymore, and it's sad.
It's super sad. It's super duper sad. I think anybody listening, or you and I, can think of a family member that has done that, you know, and been kind of separated, and it's like, if you come from a broken family and there's nothing but negativity, and you need to distance yourself from that for a few years, go ahead and do it, sure. But at the end of the day, your mom's your mom, your dad's your dad, and blood is blood. You're gonna want some kind of relationship with that person, because if you lose that person and you don't have any real time with them as an adult, you're gonna regret it, whether you think it or not. Like, you will, because that's just whether.
At the end of the day, like you said, your mom's your mom and your dad's your dad. You can't. That's just. You know,
that's what it is.
Those are your parents, bro.
Yeah. If there's something horrible that makes it to where you have to like draw a line against that person, for sure. But at some point, you know, just at least being able to say, like, how's everything going to that person, and not having any of that affect you, that's super important. And it's rough though, because families are broken. It's rough because there's a lot of negativity and there's a lot of really bad shit out there.
I have something that I think, if I was in that situation, my perspective would be, I come from this broken family, let's say with both parents, it's a really bad situation, and on a fundamental value we don't believe, so I'm just not going to interact with that person anymore. I would take that as, okay, I'm going to create the family that I want, that I envision, and with my wife and my future children, and then all of the other generations, I'm going to create those family values and a strong family value.
Absolutely.
Because I'm a hopper, so the hoppers, I'm going to change that. I'm going to change what it means to be a hopper. That's the kind of mindset, because if you're always looking forward, instead of being like, oh man, like, I'm in this fucked up situation because of the situation I was put in, like, you're not going to get very far in life if that's all you're thinking about is what's happened to you before. Like,
absolutely.
But if you look forward and build towards something, I mean, you'd be surprised how far you can go and what you can achieve. And that's not in a like financial or career kind of way. I'm saying that in like a family type of way too. You can create a beautiful family. Like, you can do that. If you came from a shit household, shit parents, you weren't really close with anyone, you can find someone, get married, have children, and create that beautiful family that you've always wanted your whole life. You're not screwed just because you come from it.
And that's a huge lesson for life in general, is use that negativity as fuel. Use that negativity, that thing that hurts you, use that as a reason to get up and do better and do more and do different. And it's easy to knock yourself down and be like, oh, well, this situation keeps me from doing that, and this keeps me from doing that. But at the end of the day, if you keep pushing, you're gonna. And I sent a bunch of my friends, I sent it to you as well, but it was that Nightingale guy talking about an idea and a goal. And goals are what keep you pushing forward. It was an after-school video. After School is a great YouTube channel.
It is.
And talking about goals and having goals and pushing forward to those goals, because whatever you have in your head that you want for the future is, you're most likely going to get there. And you know, there's varying circumstances. You might not get exactly what you thought you're going to get, but if your idea is, I'm going to build a beautiful home, I'm going to build a beautiful family, and that's what I want to do, if you put all your energy into that, you're going to create that. But it's doing it and staying on top of it. And it's, you can't get discouraged at a small hurdle, because there's so much more to your goal. Your goal means so much more to you than that hurdle, and that's, you got to find what makes you passionate to really, you know, get to that point. And I just feel like people don't have that passion or that hope for things. They don't know where to find it at. Like that comment on that short where you were talking about, like, that was like, it made me sad to read, because this person talks about, like, I agree with everything you're saying, but this and this, and it's like, it's just, you can't let that but come into your head. It's like, you agree with what it's saying, live it, do it. And that's the same thing with parenting. If you are going to say, hey, don't do this, like, you don't want your kid to be on their phone or their iPad or whatever, you better not be on your phone or your iPad in front of them all the time, because they're going to be like,
you want them to eat healthy, then you better eat healthy too.
Because they, like, something that's weird, like a universal law is hypocrisy never stands the test of time or like gets respect for some reason. Like from a kid who has no concept of the world or anything, if you're a hypocrite, they're gonna go against what
they
you're
pick
saying.
up on that.
Yeah, and that's just like, that's such a universal kind of line. It's just really interesting to think about, because you have to live what you're saying. You have to live what you're preaching.
Like telling your kids to never smoke cigarettes, and they're like, but dad smokes cigarettes.
Yeah.
Well, that's different.
Right, exactly. And that's what me and Marissa were having this conversation when we were talking about our kid and kind of how we want to go about like raising our kid and stuff. And she said that's what her parents would say a lot. So, well, I'm the parent, and my parents would say the same thing. Well, I'm the parent, so
I'm the adult.
I'm the adult.
That's what I heard.
Yeah.
In those situations.
Yeah. And it's like, that doesn't give you a right to do the opposite of what you're telling me to do.
Yeah, exactly.
And you have to live by
like there's certain things that adults do, like having sex, for example,
right.
Or let's say drinking alcohol in moderation.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly they have to be a certain age for those things,
right?
But obviously your child's not going to see you having sex, and
they should.
I guess the alcohol thing, drunk is, but if you have a beer at dinner or something, or a glass of wine, like, I think that's kind of a line where you could be like,
this comes
that's
later.
one of the situations where you could be like, when you're an adult, you can do this.
Exactly.
But you don't say, because I'm the adult, I'm doing it. You say, when you're an adult, you can do this too.
Right.
Rather than being like, oh, you can't do this.
Yeah. Well, and it's being educated too, because like if I'm having a drink at dinner, my kid asks me about it, and they're of the age to like have those thoughts and be like, well, why can't I drink that?
Yeah.
I'll be like, okay, well, listen, like, you're developing, your brain's developing, this is going to impact your development. My brain isn't developing anymore, I'm not worried, but you want to be the best you can, you want to do the best you can at things, you don't want to impact, and you explain it to them in that way and they'll understand. But and of course there's situations where they're not going to understand it. It's not just black and white, but but at the end of the day, if you stay consistent with that, like, you're telling them because it's better for them and it's bettering them, they're gonna eventually appreciate that when they're older, and that's how I, looking back on like how I was raised and how I'd want things to be different, is just treat me with mutual respect of you're doing this and telling me not to do this for the betterment of me, not because it's what you say or what you feel, but you're doing it. And if that is explained, I feel like eventually the kid's going to understand that and respect that. But communication, it's like, if there's anything in this world that is lacking in like every area that I see, is communication, with work, with families, with like yourself, communicating with yourself and how you feel about things, communicating with your boss or your coworkers about X, Y, and Z with your work. And like that's always an issue, and it's just like people don't communicate enough, and maybe people don't know how to communicate or don't practice it. But I'm telling you right now, I had a coworker that had a huge disagreement with me while I was in a position of leadership, and I reached out and said, hey, I noticed there's a divide. I want to bridge this gap, and I want to create a bridge of communication. How can we do that? And initially I heard nothing but, you're being derogatory towards me, like, why are you saying this? But just last week, that person reached out to me and said, I know I got upset, and I'm sorry for when I got upset and said that to you, because I want that bridge of communication, and I respect who you are as a person, and I'm sorry I was that way, but we're going to do this moving forward. And she reached out to me and said that. And it's, if you're doing what's right, if you're doing those things for the right reasons, and you're living it, people are going to respect it, even if it's hard in the moment to say, hey, what's going on? Is there a problem? Can we talk about it? And they initially push back against you, they're going to think about that and think, man, I was wrong. And some people will say it, some people won't, but at the end of the day, doing what's right is what you should do, whether it's difficult or not. And I feel like that's a huge limitation as to why people don't do the right thing, because it's honestly usually the harder thing to do.
Yeah. And on the topic of communication, I just finished this book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. If I could retitle it too, I'd just say How to Effectively Communicate. Great book for if you want to get better at communicating, talking to people, get better in your relationships, and just like communication specifically. It's a great book. It's by Dale Carnegie. It's a world famous book. You just type in How to Win Friends and Influence People, you'll find it. But
the main really guy at my job sent me that book. Yeah,
it's an amazing book, and a lot of it, you read it and you're like, oh yeah, like obviously, but like then when you see see him break it down in detail and tell stories about how that worked effectively. And then there's just a lot of hidden gems in there. I feel like that helped me specifically with my relationships and my communication.
Well, that's educating yourself, and educating yourself to be able to have that conversation in a more productive way, and it's wanting to do that, and it's just wanting to do better. You gotta want to do better, or if you're sad and you're asking yourself, why am I sad? It's probably because you're not doing the best you can. And if you're depressed and it's a horrible circumstance, like you lose a family member or you get sick or something like that, it's difficult, but what's going to get you out of that situation is finding positivity and finding motivation.
And having goals to work towards, like you were saying.
Exactly, because if you don't have that.
Yeah. You're the best example of that I've seen in my life, dude. Like,
thanks, man.
No, dude, I'm serious. Like, whenever we first, met and you talked about the things you wanted, like, I'm seeing it in real time coming to fruition, dude.
Yeah.
Like, you're a true inspiration to me, bro.
Thanks, brother.
Yeah, I'm serious, dude.
I appreciate that a lot, dude.
You're not a hypocrite.
I try not to.
You live it, bro.
I try not to be. And I also, with, compliments, I try my best to absorb what you're saying and appreciate it, but at the same time, convince myself that I'm still doing bad. Because that's what's going to keep me moving forward,
Well, dude, like you were saying about how people, a lot of times they can say all these things but they're hypocrites because they don't live it. Like, when you were when you were talking about goals specifically in that after school video, and about being consistently and moving forward, and you'll start to see things. It may not be exactly. That's literally exactly how I've seen you progress over the last few years.
Thanks, man.
Is I've seen it, and
I try more.
I'm saying people take that seriously, what he was saying there, because it's worked well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's because if you live it and you're authentically yourself, nothing can change you or dissuade you from what you know is right or wrong. And if you live that way, you're free. Because you have the ability at the end of the day to say, I'm going to make this choice for this reason that I believe in. If you have that, then you're free and you can do what you want to do. And especially thinking about parenting, it's easier to put the iPad in front of your kid. It's easier to put technology in front of them so they aren't being active, and you don't have to teach them how to calm down and handle themselves. But if you live by the example of, I'm not going to be on my phone around them, I'm not going to encourage them to use social media or do any of that stuff, and you live by that example, at the end of the day, they're going to follow what you're doing. And that's the only way to be a leader, is to live what you're trying to lead with. And you just have to keep staying on top of it, living it and doing it, and eventually something good is going to happen that gets you to your goal. But if you're never working for it, it's never going to happen. Because I always hear a conversation of manifesting. People talk about manifesting and saying that it's BS, and then there's people that say there's something to it. And I'm really in the middle, where it's you can think about something a lot.
Right.
And that will, as long as you encourage yourself to keep doing stuff to create that thing you're thinking about, it's going to happen. But if you're just saying, oh, well, today's going to be a good day, and you don't put any effort into looking on the brighter side of things, then it's not going to.
Well, I don't think it's black and white. Literally, if I think about this dream life I have, it's going to come reality.
Yeah.
But the first time I thought about manifestation really was in Plato's writings. He said, the way he thinketh is the way he doeth.
Right.
So your mind could really, what you think about your life's going to be it's not going to work out like that black and white perfectly. When he says that, a lot of people could take that at face value and just be okay, so if I think about this, it's going to happen. No, that's not what that's not what it means. It just means that the way you look at it is going to determine what's going to happen. Because I can sit here and be oh, my life sucks. I'm not a millionaire, and I don't have a girlfriend yet, even though I really want to have kids and I really want to get married. And but no, I wake up every day and I'm man, I have a really awesome job. I have a nice apartment. I love my roommate. I love my life. I have all this free time to do whatever I want. I have great friends. I have amazing parents, and just all these great things in my life. And when I really started to appreciate what I had, and because whenever I first started thinking that I had a good life, at first I didn't really believe it.
Right.
But I would just be like, no, you have a great life. You're lucky to be where you are and have what you have. And at first I was lying to myself. I didn't really believe that. But guess what? I started to build a life that I was actually happy with, that I was grateful for the things I had. And really thinking that way, it can really change things.
Absolutely.
Your mind can really affect how you feel about your life and where the trajectory of where your life's going to go.
I think a good analogy too is like, if you want to visualize this in some way, like what you are is what you eat. That's a saying, right? But at the same time, what media you consume and put yourself in front of all the time is going to affect how you think about things and how you view life, you know. And that's the same thing with your thoughts. It's the same thing. Like what you're constantly putting in front of yourself, feeding yourself, that's what you're going to do. So if you let yourself say, oh, well, woe is me, I'm going to victimize myself, guess what? You're going to victimize yourself. But if you have a negative thought and then you force yourself to think, but you know what? Look at this positive thing. Eventually you're going to just go to the positive thing, and the negative thing will be there, but you're so used to looking at the positive that you'll see the good in it. And don't blind yourself with just looking at the good things. You have to accept the negatives for what they are, but most of the time looking at the good is going to benefit you way more than focusing on the negative and the bad. I wish I could say something more impactful for the statistics that you mentioned and those kids that are in those positions. Like, if there's anything that I want to make music for, to encourage better, and do this podcast for, is to reach people that are in those situations, or reach that commenter who commented on that short, and like help them understand, like, you can be happy. You can, you know, just because you're the product of a family that doesn't care about you, you can do better than that.
Well, what he said specifically was that, like, he said that he really liked what he heard, and he agrees that thinking that way is a good thing, but he said, how can I believe in myself if no one has ever believed in me? And what I told back to him, and I'll restate that again, is, bro, the first step is believing in yourself, because what does that other person have to believe in if you don't have any belief in yourself at all? Like, it really is based on you first setting that foundation of your life and your foundation, to be able to, you can't let other people dictate how your life's going to go. You have to be the one in charge of your life and in the driver's seat, taking control of your life. And because I've said this a lot, but you are in control, and no matter what kind of situation you're in, what your childhood was like, you can dictate how good your life's going to be. You get to choose if your life's going to be fucked up or if you're going to have an amazing life. That's up to you. And unfortunately, a lot of people decide to continue to let other things dictate them, and
I think a lot of people decide to
never
take control. They decide to never put their hands on the wheel. Like, I'm just going with the flow, and I'm going to end up where the flow takes me. And it's like, of course you have to go with the flow of something traumatic happens or a circumstance happens that you have no control over whatsoever, but it affects you. You have to go with the flow of that. But generally, everything else you have control over.
Well, yeah, you have to think about every day, what can you do that you actually have control of?
Right.
Like,
absolutely.
There are some, like you were saying, there's a lot of things that you don't have control over. There's nothing you can do to change the outcome of whatever it is. But the way you live your life, what you do when you wake up every morning and go to your job, and what you do every day, your daily habits, you have control over that. And success is built over time with small habits. It's not something that just happens one day, you wake up and you're the person you've always wanted to be. No. Like, you slowly start to change things, and sometimes you fuck up, you make mistakes that, you know, so you're trying to change something, but one day you make a mistake and you go backwards. That's going to happen. You're going to have hiccups along the way, but, you know, it's really a long game. Life's a game. It's a long game, and it's something about luck too. I think a lot of people will be like, just to kind of make it seem like it's not in their control. They'll be, oh, you just got lucky.
Yeah.
But I think it's kind of funny how in a lot of, when you really think about it, think about people that get lucky tend to be people that are generally winners in life.
Right.
And people that are losers tend not to get lucky.
Yeah.
Because luck is a thing, but people that have winning habits tend to get more lucky than.
Absolutely.
It's just funny how that works out.
Yeah.
So is it all luck? I don't know.
And is it all manifesting? No. But it's a mixture. It's a mixture of trying, thinking about it, and doing it. And it's just there's some, you can't just put it into a box. And I really like thinking about what we're talking about, thinking about the statistics we talked about, and just people in those situations and where I've been. I had an issue with confidence whenever I was in high school and like middle school and getting out of high school, because I came from a very like being knocked down by your parents for their own gain. Like, what you're wearing, that looks stupid. Like, just because they're wanting to be like upset.
Hypocritical.
Yeah, they're just wanting to be mean, and because they're feeling bad, they're going to make you feel bad type shit. I grew up with a lot of that. And I think creating confidence for yourself is the best thing you can do in life. And it's one of the hardest things you can do, because be able to portray that confidence to people comes from practice and doing it. But it's so hard to develop for yourself, because if you don't have like that confidence, if you don't have people believing in you, how do you believe in yourself?
Right.
And that it comes from truly believing in what you're doing, and doing it to the best of your ability, and you're going to gain confidence.
Well, confidence comes from competence. So when you're actually able to do the things you're confident about, that's when you become confident. It's not.
For sure.
And
it's like a reaffirming thing.
Yeah. Because if it's not just about thinking, like conversating with people. Let's say you have social anxiety. You don't just become confident like a switch flips and then you're just like walking into a conversation, you're all confident and talking to people and stuff. It's time practicing talking to people, talking to more people, trying to think about where you messed up in that conversation, and then eventually you're going to become competent and good at it. And then that confidence just comes right with it. You can't just be like, if you're really bad socially, but you're telling yourself over and over, oh, I'm going to be so good at going and talk to this person, and then that won't help you actually in the conversation,
Yeah, absolutely. This comes from practice. And like you said, I like really what you said too about like confidence comes from the competence, and it comes from doing it and being good at it.
Right.
Not through anyone else's perspective, but your own, that I'm good at this thing.
Yeah, the only person that needs to know is yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so difficult to believe that for someone that's in a position of having no confidence, because it's like, what are you even saying? But really, if you practice it, you will get there. And that's something I've struggled with a lot, and I feel like anybody struggles with. But I've said this before, and I think it's funny. Like, you see people in politics, you see celebrities, you see these people, and they're like blisteringly confident, like super confident. And I think that comes with a certain amount of ignorance, to just be confident without having any like work towards being confident. Because like anybody who's genuinely thinking about doing it and thinking about all the like logistics of doing it, and it's overwhelming. It's easy to be unconfident. But people that are just confident, like a sociopath that's just confident all the time, specifically like a politician, like they're not thinking about all that stuff you're thinking about. You're actually ahead of them. You don't realize it, but you are, because you're considering so much more that they don't even like begin to consider.
Well, yeah, because then it comes to the point of, are you talking about being socially like adequate, like good at conversation? Are you just doing it, just saying stuff to be cool, or are you being authentic?
Exactly.
And in my opinion, you're ahead if you're being authentic. I think that's the whole point, especially for like a political or like a leader of a country. You would want the most authentic thing, but that's not, unfortunately, that's not how it works out. Because they just go in and they say whatever's gonna, be cool.
Right.
And a lot of, even just in day-to-day life, a lot of people just have opinions or say things because that's the cool thing to think about. But I really resonate with people. Like I was telling you right before this episode that I met someone at work that I was like, I really enjoyed having a conversation with him, not because he said the coolest things or because he's the coolest guy ever and does all these cool things, because he's authentic and genuine. And unfortunately that's rare.
It's super rare. And it's super sad that it's rare, and that's why things like religion are needed. That's why things like politics are needed. That's why these things are in place, is because for someone to authentically be themselves, it takes so much trial and error, it takes so much effort, and most people are never going to put in that effort. And it's really just like being at a place where you can say, I've done my best, I'm trying to do better. You're already ahead of most people, because most people aren't even beginning to try to do better. They don't even care to think about what is better, because it's easier to say this or that.
Well, I think that whatever they're told is better is what they end up believing is better.
Yeah, that's very true.
But like you said, they don't think about what's actually going to be better.
Right.
They hear that if you do this, that's going to make you better at this, whatever.
Yeah.
And they're just like, okay, so that's going to make me better. They don't actually think about, so this is my problem, this is the goal I want to have, how can I get to this goal?
Right.
They just watch a 5-minute YouTube video and they're like, okay, whatever he said, that's what I'm going to go with.
Yeah. And not apply it to their circumstance or life. Yeah.
But something that I've told you before, when we were just having a drunken conversation one night, was what is wisdom, right? And what's the difference between intelligence and wisdom? And a thought I had was, wisdom is when you put intelligence into action. So you can read a million books, but if you don't end up doing anything with that information, that's where you're still intelligent. But wisdom is when I've read 10 books and now I'm going to start applying some of these things to my life, and I'm going to figure out what actually works. Right. And that's where you gain the wisdom from, is from actually putting it into action in real life scenarios.
That's such a great way to put it.
I think that's a huge problem with the education system. Is all it is here's this textbook, follow these, learn everything in this textbook, and then you don't actually learn about how stuff happens in real life situations. Yeah, it's nice to read a ton of books and learn all this stuff, but if you don't actually end up doing anything about it with your life, in real life, you're not gaining really anything from it.
No, you're just repeating.
You have it in your mind, the intelligence, I guess you would say, but wisdom is from actually doing the thing that you read about.
Absolutely. And that's something that I really, really, really enjoy that we're doing, is we're talking about our experiences. We're talking about a topic like family, and stuff like that. And then we're applying it to our life and our life experience and what we've gained from applying these things to our life. That's the best form of development and learning that you can have, you know? And that's what we're communicating, because I'm not perfect. You're not perfect. No. We both made mistakes, but it's those mistakes that make us who we are. And it's accepting those mistakes and taking the positive from them and saying, because any negative thing that happens, you're eventually going to be like, there's good in that of some sort. You at least learn something from it, to be safer or whatever. But
I mean, at the very least, you, if you did something really stupid, you realize that, oh, that's fucked up. I can't be doing that anymore. Yeah. At the very least, you learn not to do that anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's just living life and going outside, having a conversation with a good friend, going outside into nature, and going and talking to other people, and just living your life and living it to the best of your ability. So if you're a kid that grew up in a situation like we talked about, where your mom barely knows your name and your birthday and treats you like shit, there's somebody out there that feels that same way and would like to talk to you about it. Go find that person, talk to them about it, because you're going to gain some form of perspective from that person. They might be batshit crazy. It might be somebody that you talk to and they've taken it to a complete left field, but at least you can take that and be like, oh, well, I don't want to do that. But at least go talk to somebody, go have a conversation with somebody. What's helped me more than anything is having great friends like Hopper, like Matthew, like Freddie, and being able to talk to them about what's going on and hearing their perspective on it, and hearing what they think about what happened, and just having that foundation. If you don't have family at home, you can find family You just have to find the people that want that genuine connection too. And anybody can find that.
And don't draw lines on who you make friends with just because of where they're from or the kind of situation they come from. Absolutely. Or anything like that, because we're not exactly the same. We didn't come from exactly the same life.
Mm-hmm.
Luckily we met because of Matthew, but a lot of my friends, it didn't just come from the same type of, we're not all the same type of person,
right.
And
it's like
I think it's
all
great.
Play baseball. And
I think it's great to have different perspectives. Like you were saying, you get to hear because whenever you actually sit down, not even just the podcast, but when me and you talk, me and Matthew talk, you can just sit there and have a conversation about life. It's like, those are some of the best times, bro. Absolutely. And it's some of the most impactful times, because I can actually take something away and use that in my life. Like, taking different perspectives from others has really impacted me in a huge way, and I think a lot of people might be a little too narrow-minded with how their perspective and the way they think about things is pretty narrow-minded. But if you can actually listen to someone and not just go in thinking, oh, I believe this way and that's how it's going to be, I'm just going to argue my point, instead of being willing to be open to changing your mind about certain things, is super important.
Super important. And I had a 4-hour conversation with Matthew the other night when I was working my security shift, and I wrote down notes while we were talking, just because all the stuff we talked about is stuff that I think about on a daily basis, and I was able to bring it up to him and get his perspective, which gave me ideas. If you that's what a real friend, family friendship type of connection is. It's like genuinely expressing your ideas and what you think about on a daily basis, what you worry about, and then getting their perspective on it and getting a new way of looking at it, getting a new way of approaching it, a new passion or new fuel to keep going in that direction. Find family, find your family. It doesn't have to be if your mom treats you like shit, it doesn't have to be your mom. If your dad treats you like shit, it doesn't have to be your dad. But that friend that understands where you're coming from, cares about you, and wants what's best for you, and you have that genuine of a connection, then you found family. And find that and have those conversations, and you will feel better. But if it's stuck in your head and you deal with it by yourself all the time, you're not going to get very far, because it's life is not...
family does not have to be blood.
No.
It doesn't have to be. But as we see from some of the stats we read, that if you are let's say you're in your 20s and potentially could be having kids soon, or really make sure you're with a person you're going to spend your life with. Make sure you're with a person that you want to have kids with before you have to sleep with them and stuff, because this is sad, guys. This is really sad, these stats. I mean, those are high percentages. I mean, 85% of youths in prison from fatherless homes. 85%.
Yeah, that's huge.
So you can't even it's not even an argument, because a lot of people be like, oh, I came from a single mom, or I'm a single mom and I do great. It's okay, yeah, there's anomalies, but if you look at the numbers, that is, you are objectively worse off in life if you come from a fatherless home.
Right.
In a very bad, in all aspects of life.
A way you can prove. Yeah.
Dropping out of high school, homelessness and suicides, and going to prison. Girls are 7 to 8 times more likely to become a teen mother. Man, we need to do better.
We need to do better
as a society.
And what starts better, what starts that trajectory in that direction, is having these conversations, just like we said in the last episode. Having these conversations
and finding your people too.
Finding your people, applying what you learn from those conversations to your life and really living it.
Yeah.
Find love, live truthfully, and be authentic.
Well, thanks for joining us on another thoughtful journey.